In a previous lesson, we discussed a measure called center of spread, where um, we used a mathematical technique to measure where the middle of all the numbers were, or approximately where all the numbers are. And so in this lesson, we're going to examine a measure called the measure of spread, and specifically at the end of the lesson, we look at something called standard deviation. And so to introduce you to this idea of spread, imagine you have these two companies that produce a new hybrid of cars, and several of their cars were tested, and the miles per gallon per car was recorded. And as you can see here in these two companies, the average for both of their cars is 72.1. And so now looking at these questions here, the first question, what is one difference you see between the data collected from both companies? And you can see company one appears to have numbers that are much higher and much lower. There's what we would say more spread in this data set. Compared to here, the numbers are closer together. Again, although they both have an average of 72.1, meaning the center is in about 72. But you see you see a different result from their cars. And that is an example of what we're looking at when we say measure of spread. And so based on this question here, if you were to buy one of the new hybrids produced by these two companies, which company would you choose? And again, the answers would vary here, meaning you have different reasons. But this company two, has more consistency. Company one has some cars that do higher numbers. So it'd be your choice which one. Some people want a consistent choice at a good company two, or they would take a chance in getting a higher amount, but you could also get a lower amount. So that's the idea of measure of spread. If you need to, I would go ahead and do some prep work, but on some of these assignments to help you with this concept, but we're going to continue with the lesson here. So let's let's remind you what we did last time. Measure of center first, calculate the means. And so you can see here are two data sets again that have the same mean 5. When you add them up for set 1 and set 2, you get 5. And so we're going to use that data below to examine measure of spread. So if we create dot plots of data set 1 and data set 2, notice the two colors right there. Here's data set 1, the points are closer together. Here's data set 2, the points are spread out. But again, their mean is 5. Their average is 5 still. Take a look at that real quick. And so looking at that, we can now discuss some of the observations about the data. In set 2, it looks like set 2 has a greater deviation in range, right? The values are more spread out. And so here you would see the values are closer together. And so again, this is what we're measuring with a measure of spread. And we'll do that with different types of measures. Like in the past, we did mean, median, and mode. In this one, we'll look at range, deviation, standard deviation to determine how spread out numbers are. And in order to understand this idea that becomes very important now and in statistics, this idea of the distribution of the data. When someone asks you for the distribution, many times they're looking for what's the center and what's the spread of the data. And so that's the introduction for lesson 1-6.